Hey there, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, and looks like I'm going to be going into Professor Brad tries stuff mode for a little bit. But check it out, I've set up some ambiance. I got one of them cool lights. We got Christmas lights. We got a blackboard. We're ready to rock this. All right, so today's topic is going to be Big Five personality model, Big Five personality traits. If you don't know anything about personality psychology, it's basically just a way of breaking down people and their personalities. Like, that's the simplest way to put it, but if you've ever taken like a Myers-Briggs test or one of those true colors things at like an offsite at like a team building thing at work or whatever, Big Five is something like that, but a little bit deeper. I first read about it in a book by this guy Brian Little called Me, Myself, and Us. I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's a really good book and a great jumping off point. But come along and learn a thing or two, or not. All right, so your Big Five personality, or ocean, or canoe model for personality basically is breaking down your personality into five traits or five spectrums of traits. So at the top, you got openness. I would say that openness is sort of like the creativity dimension. Like it would be a spectrum of like whether a person is open or closed to experience. Conscientiousness, that would be, you're either conscientious or unconscientious or, kind of haphazard, messy. I would say conscientiousness is sort of like the personality trait of like responsibility, um, you know, getting stuff done. Type A personality type things would be high in conscientiousness, whereas like your average slacker, not unlike myself, would be low in conscientiousness. So then we've got extroversion, which pretty simply is like, introverts, extroverts, and, you know, it breaks down a little bit further from that, but we'll get into the sub traits a little bit later on. Agreeable, but like an extroverted person, they're the kind of people that, they're happy to go out in parties. They love being in crowds. They love, they get a buzz from being around people. And introverts less so, or like, have like a lower social battery, let's say. Agreeableness, this is a personality trait, basically whether or not you're interested in the affairs or concerns of people and emotional concerns, things like that. Like, somebody who's empathetic would be agreeable, whereas somebody who's disagreeable usually would end up in jail, something like that. Like disagreeable people end up not doing so well as far as personal relationships, and people don't like them so much. Then at the bottom of the list, we have neuroticism. Now, neuroticism is basically sensitivity to negative emotion. It's someone who's high in neuroticism is a worrywart, always worrying about what could happen, ruminating on the future, things like that. I actually, just before I started this, started thinking about applying like personality traits to different characters and shows. I'm a huge fan of Lost. Like Lost is one of my favorite shows of all time. But like if you start looking at things through the lens of personality psychology, you'll start to recognize a lot of these traits in characters and people, and just like just things everywhere you go and what you do. So like for instance on Lost, Jack is a very conscientious person. He's a spinal surgeon. He steps up and takes charge when nobody else will, when they crash and stuff like that. Like Charlie would be your classic extroverted character. He's a rock star, and he loves being around people, stuff like that. Hurley's a super agreeable guy. Like he's just like good old fun time Hurley. Um, Stuff like that. I'd say like neuroticism, you could apply that to Kate very easily because, well, she has plenty of reason. Paranoid people would come across as neurotic. Yeah, I don't know. Kate would be high withdrawal, which is one of the sub traits. But okay, so that's another thing. And All right, we're about 5 minutes in, so let's say we'll start talking about the subtraits of each one and how they break down. So, openness breaks down into politeness and oh shoot, yeah. Nope, that's wrong. I'm talking about agreeableness. Openness is intellect and openness to experience. Um, Intellect isn't to be confused with like, high IQ or something. It's more, call it interest in abstract and weird ideas. The more someone is just like, ooh, I want to hear about this weird thing, they'd probably be very high in openness. Whereas somebody who's just like, I don't want to hear it, low in openness to experience, or low in intellect and openness to abstract ideas and just weird ways of thinking, thinking outside the box, that type of thing. And openness to experience is basically just creativity. Is like, do you want to go to the opera? Do you want to go see a country band? Do you want to go see this new art house film? People who say yes, yes, yes to those things, very high in openness to experience, and like right on the face of it, openness to experience. That's exactly what it is. But openness is sort of like the creativity dimension. It's entrepreneurs and like creative thinkers, people who don't do things the every like who don't fit in the box would be high in openness. So that's something to watch out for, to take into account. Whereas somebody who's low in openness, would be very set in their ways, wouldn't be very interested in, like, I just want to sit here and do this one thing that I like to do, and I'm good with that, and very set in my ways type of thing. You can see that in people. I can't really think of anybody offhand, but I don't know, like Archie Bunker or something like that would be not very high in openness. Conscientiousness, on the other hand, is like, you're like dutiful, practical, responsible type of person. Conscientiousness breaks down into orderliness and industriousness, which can be vastly different things. So, like, if you were the kid that didn't clean their room, or like, the Jordan Peterson thing where it's like, clean your room, that guy's probably very high in conscientiousness. I myself am not. I never really kept a clean room. If you look around, like, I've got some flair going, but I'm kind of a messy guy, and it's fine with me. But, I'm low orderliness. But as far as industriousness, which is a totally different trait, it's whether or not somebody will get things done, So somebody who's low in industriousness is a lazy sack of potatoes, couch potato, whereas somebody high in industriousness is always working, always doing something, always on the go, always doing something all the time. So that's something to keep in mind. Extroverts. It doesn't, like, I have taken personality tests in the past, and as far as like extroversion, which breaks down into enthusiasm and assertiveness, I am high enthusiasm, low assertiveness. So, like, I'm not pushy, but I'm very enthusiastic. Like, when I was a little kid, oh, what the hell was it? My friend's mom used to, like, think, oh, that little excited boy. And yeah, I tend to be a pretty excitable dude. I'm very enthusiastic, but not super assertive. So somebody who is low enthusiasm but high assertiveness would probably end up being a more disagreeable person just by nature. And like, you can start to see like weird little intersections in all of these traits when you start looking at things through lenses of personality psychology. So let's see, enthusiasm, assertiveness, but I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know how to break that down, but somebody who is low assertiveness is a pushover, you know, tends to get taken advantage of, you would think, and you know, just is happy to like go along to get along type of thing. Whereas somebody who's high in assertiveness is like, no, we're gonna do things my way, and I know, like, I'm you know, I'm gonna get right in your face, and you know, this is what's gonna happen, you know, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But low enthusiasm, I'm trying to think of somebody low enthusiasm just doesn't, Eeyore. Eeyore would be low enthusiasm and probably very high neuroticism. Okay, and then moving on to agreeableness, which breaks down into compassion and politeness. So compassionate people are really concerned with the affairs of others, the feelings of others, the problems of others. They're the helping type. They're there to lend a listening ear and comfort people. So like nurses, teachers, people who get into careers that are very people or therapists, stuff like that. People who want to help people would be very high in compassion, whereas people who just don't care about people would be low compassion. And then the other end of agreeableness is politeness, which kind of speaks for itself, whether somebody is like polite or not. And concerned with, I guess, like the comfort levels of the people around them and things of that nature. And then last on the list we have neuroticism, which breaks down into volatility and withdrawal. So based on personality tests, like I am reasonably high in neuroticism, but I'm weird because I'm high volatility but low withdrawal. So I guess I'll do things and I will be brave in scary situations, or I'll do difficult things, but I will lose my stuff. I will lose my temper and rant and rave and yell and scream sometimes, but I am willing to do difficult things. So volatility would be temper, essentially. Like if somebody is known to have a bad temper and fly off the handle, that's somebody who would be high volatility, whereas somebody who's low volatility would be, cool as a cucumber, very cool under pressure, and that seems like an admirable trait because it's something that I classically lack sometimes. Whereas withdrawal is how much you withdraw from the difficult situations based on, I guess, your sensitivity to negative emotions. So, in stressful situations, will you fight or flight, essentially? Hello. So, yeah. Withdrawal would be, how willing are you to do difficult things under pressure? So, neuroticism being like, the worriers, the highly emotional types. But anyway, getting into this book, Me, Myself, and Us, this was a really great read, and I would highly recommend this guy to just about anybody. I really hope this is not reversing the screen. I suspect it is because it is for me, but I'm just trying to see the chat. Anyway, Me, Myself, and Us definitely taught me a lot of things. I myself would describe myself as an introvert, but this book goes on about something called restorative niches. Like the author says, like he's sort of an introvert by nature, but he's a professor, has to do speeches and stuff. So people who are introverts but act out of character and play the part of extroverts, which you can do. You have adjustable traits. Like just because you score whatever on a personality test doesn't mean that you're that all the time in every situation, right? Like you have malleable traits and you have kind of like set ingrained, you have your set baseline for your personality traits, but you can act out of character, and in doing so there can be a cost where think of a social battery. Somebody who's an introvert goes out to a party, every so often you gotta duck into a quiet room and just sort of recharge your social battery a little bit because it's overwhelming, it's too much. And maybe somebody like that is high withdrawal, for instance, or maybe they are low enthusiasm. Maybe they're not open to experience. Like there's intersections to all of these traits in like the big five here. And like I've even heard of other models that add a sixth dimension of like honesty, and that makes a whole lot of sense to me, being that like I'm an incredibly honest person. Telling the truth is super duper important to me, and like I'm very much like the I cannot tell a lie, that type of person. So I don't know, that speaks to me. But as far as the big five, which is what I'm here talking about, I only discovered that in doing a little bit of research on that. Um, yeah, I feel like I've rambled for a while, and I've given kind of the basics of the big five, and I actually, yeah, like I'm not super duper expert on this, but my personal feeling is that if people understand personality psychology better, they can understand themselves and others better, and kind of, get a better sense of who you're dealing with when you've spoken to somebody a little bit, or like, you have a conversation with meeting a new person, and you can kind of, when you think about things in these terms, you can kind of get a sense of what people are like and learn tactics to deal with different types of people. Like, Myers-Briggs, everybody goes on about that. I think like, what was it, like INTF, or I can't remember what I scored on that, but of all the personality tests, also, yeah, if you want to talk true colors, I am apparently equal parts blue and green, which is super weird. Um, but I like the Big Five model. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I feel like if people understand personality psychology better, they can understand themselves and others better. And, the way to make the world a better place is to make better parts of a bigger whole. So if people improve themselves as individuals, they can then become brighter lights to spread that goodness out to the world, and just, make everything better, thus striking a blow against all that is evil in the world and making the world a better place for everybody in it. So there you go. Thanks for joining me in my TED Talk, and that's a little bit about the ocean model. Hope you enjoyed this. This is a channel called Brad Tries Stuff, so I gotta try different things, and we'll see what sticks and what doesn't. But we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for joining me. Later, y'all.